Colleagues, good morning. Can anybody hear me?
Good
Yes,
morning.
good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning, Chair.
Thank you so much. I was just a little worried.
Ora voorsitter, ons kan nie sien hoor.
Okay, no. I'm happy. I was worried about the system.
Voorsitter, ek dink jou mic is gemute hoor. Ek kan sien jy praat, maar ons hoor jou nie.
My mic is in mute. Can you hear my word?
Ons
Yes,
hoor
sir.
jou. Ons hoor jy.
Oh, ek wil sê my mic.
Thank you
So much.
Voorsitter, nee, my speaker was afgedraai want dis kom ek nie kon hoor nie. Ja, dankie.
Alright. Thank you so much.
Morning, Chair. As Councillor Meyer, die kant, ek is by Rosina ingehoor.
Okay, ek gaan nou 'n roll call maak. Net 'n minuut. Yeah, colleagues, good morning. I think we must start with a roll call so that we make sure that all the committee members of the MPAC is present. So can we start there with Councillor Aniki Jansen van Rensburg?
Good morning. Good morning, Chair. Good morning also to everyone.
Next, thank you, Aniki. Councillor Barker, are you in? I don't hear Councillor Barker.
Chairperson, I am in. This is Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Councillor Mvumvu, are you in, sir? I don't hear Councillor Mvumvu. Let me just check here if I can see. He's not on the system. I can't see him. So Councillor Mvumvu is not in. Councillor Kannemeyer. Councillor Marilyn Kannemeyer. You check. Yes, I can see her. She's on, but she's on mute. Councillor Kannemeyer, you are still on mute. Can we carry on? We go to Councillor Erika Meyer. I heard a voice this morning.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in.
Okay, Councillor Gous, Janetta Gous, ICDP. Councillor Gous, are you present? Okay, we carry on. We can come back to her. Councillor Faisal Porter, Patriotic Alliance, are you in?
We're not from the party this morning, my leader. While I'm on sick leave, I'm in. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Porter. Next is Councillor Kwaza. I hope I pronounce it correctly.
Good morning, Chairperson and everyone. I'm in.
Oh, that's the lady. Thank you so much, Councillor Kwaza. Is my pronunciation is it correct? Councillor
Yes, Councillor, you pronounce it correctly.
Thank you so much. Members of the committee, there's still two names outstanding. Is Councillor Gous and Councillor Mvumvu. I will see when they come in. It's 9 already. So we need to carry on with our important meeting MPAC, the consideration of the annual report. So welcome everybody. I also want to welcome the personnel of the Auditor General that will also have a presentation about the audit report this morning. It's something new, but they are here with us. Thank you so much. I hope they are connected already. Then I also want to welcome the municipal manager and his executive directors. Welcome to all of you. Welcome to all the councillors. It is the members of the MPAC. And lastly, I also want to welcome the members of the public. That is, I think there's a link out for those who are in via the link. I also want to welcome you. So thank you so much. There's no one that sent apologies to me. So the next point on the agenda is the apologies, and I didn't receive any apologies. I spoke this morning to Councillor House, so maybe she's struggling to come in. And I see the hand of Mr. Puren.
Yeah.
So I want to, yeah, Mr. Puren.
Chairperson, no, Councillor Gous sent a message now on the chat box, and she just phoned me also. She's struggling to come in here. I advise her to switch everything off and try again. So let's see whether she will be in soon.
Now, our first presentation for the day is a presentation from the Auditor General's office. I must just check whether they are here. Preston, are you in?
Morning, Chair. I'm in. I have morning, everybody. I also have my senior manager here, Nazamela. She will do the presentation. I will hand over to her.
Okay. Start, Preston, then. Side. I just want to tell the members part of the meeting. I think this is the first time that the Auditor General's office is so kind to do the presentation for the audit report. And the people exactly that was part of the team of the Auditor General that was in Mossel Bay with the investigations of the Auditor General. Preston himself was here. He's the manager. So thank you, Preston, for avail yourself for this presentation and be with your manager. And also Preston senior manager, Mrs. Ndamela. She personally is also part of the meeting. Thank you also so much for yourself, to avail yourself for this meeting. So over to you. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning to all the MPAC members. I would also like to greet the municipal manager and the management of the municipality. Chairperson, I would like to thank you so much for the opportunity that you have given us, an opportunity to present our audit outcomes. It is Auditor General's commitment to assist the governance committees in terms of understanding the Auditor General's audit outcomes, so that the committee will have proper insights in terms of what is what the AG encountered throughout the audit process, as well as to assist you in terms of your oversight responsibility by providing those insights. Thank you. So I will take you through the presentation, Chair, if you don't mind, just also to avoid issues with connectivity, if I can switch off the camera. So in terms of our reputational promise, Chairperson, Auditor General is a supreme audit institution, and our mandate is to strengthen our country's democracy by enabling oversight, accountability, and governance in the public sector through auditing, thereby building public confidence. So the purpose of this document is to provide an executive summary of the audit outcomes of the financial audit, performance information that we've looked at, as well as compliance with the legislation that we audited of the Mossel Bay municipality. So in terms of the overview, the municipality is the third largest population in the Garden Road district. The municipality is a category B municipality, and its vision is to be the trend-setting, dynamic municipality which delivers quality services and is responsive to the demands and the challenges of the community, which are in terms of the constitutional mandate, and the stakeholder can participate in harmony and dignity. So if I can move on to the presentation. We have in 1.4 the organizational structure, which just covers who are the members of the executive council, being the mayor and the deputy mayor. We also highlight that the municipal manager who subsequently left the organization. But for the period that we looked at or we audited, it was Advocate Gilomi. Then in terms of the funding, if we look at 1.5, the municipality has disclosed in the financial statements on page 160 to 161 that the Mossel Bay municipality spent 1.2 billion of its financial operating budget of the 1.3 billion that was budgeted for, resulting in under expenditure of about 82 million, which is about 6.5% underspending. And it also spent 227 million from the budget of 259 million, resulting in underspending of its capital expenditure by 25 million, which is just about 10% underspending. So there are detailed explanations contained in the annual report, which resulted in that underspending, as well as the saving on expenditure, which has been detailed in the annual report. But the main reason that we've identified also in terms of the capital budget was due to the housing project, which was the upgrading of informal settlement of Asazani, not being correctly budgeted for. The project was finalized and no further expenditure resulted thereof, but then the amount was not fully spent, which was subsequently rolled over in terms of the infrastructure projects. Then if I can move on, let's go to the next page. I will now explain the audit opinion history, where we're reflecting on how the municipality has performed in terms of the Auditor General's opinion on financial statements, predetermined objectives, as well as compliance with legislation. In the 3 years, the municipality in 1819 obtained an unqualified audit report with some findings on compliance, which is denoted by the color that is yellow on the presentation. There were findings on compliance with legislation, specifically coming from the supply chain management. But in the 1920 financial year, the municipality achieved an unqualified audit opinion with no findings on predetermined objectives and no findings on compliance to legislation. That is what we call clean audit outcome. Similarly, for the 2020-21 financial year, the municipality obtained a clean audit outcome. So what was there as compliance in that in 2018-19 financial year was the non-compliance relating to SCM regulation, where the subcontractor was required for any tender above 30 million, which was not the case in Mossel Bay municipality. Then if we can move on, Preston. So that picture that I've shown above, it depicts that in terms of the comparative information, the municipality achieved an unqualified audit in the financial statements, and there are no findings on predetermined objectives and no findings on compliance to legislation. It should be noted, though, that on financial statements, there were findings that we identified during the audit process. However, we evaluated the nature of those findings and did not result or did not constitute material non-compliance to the non-compliance to the legislation, which is section 122 of the MFMA. It is also important to note that management should analyze the internal control deficiencies that resulted in these findings and implement action plans to address the control weaknesses in order to prevent reoccurrence in the future. We would like to also highlight that the municipality systems of internal control established over the period of compliance with legislation on supply chain management were sound. However, we identified some non-compliance findings which resulted in some irregular expenditure, which was not significant for reporting in this current year. Management is encouraged to evaluate the policies and procedures in the municipality to ensure that there is alignment with the supply chain management processes to ensure that the achievement of internal control objectives. Management is also encouraged to consider recommendations provided during the audit process in order to enhance their control environment in general. We have not identified any findings relating to performance information, as well as in terms of human resources management, which we have assessed as good in terms of the control environment in that area. We also commend the municipality for maintaining this status and demonstrating that there are sound controls embedded within these processes. But if you look at financial health of the municipality, we've assessed it as concerning due to the municipality having negative financial indicators. It is just the indicators. We are not saying they financially are in trouble, but there were negative financial indicators which resulted in overall assessment being negative in the sense that we're saying it's concerning. That was as a result of the creditors as a percentage of cash and equivalents exceeding 100%, as well as ensuring that the current liabilities as a percentage of next year's budget that was greater than 100%. Also, there was 10%, there was 10%, more than 10% assessment relating to the impairment provision. So management should continuously monitor financial viability of the municipality on a regular basis to ensure that it does not run into financial problems, which we are saying currently that is not the situation. However, they need to continuously monitor in order to ensure that everything goes well. If we're looking at irregular expenditure that has been disclosed in the financial statements, for the year under review, there was irregular expenditure that was reported that occurred in the current year, but that irregular expenditure was continuing from the contract that was identified as non-compliant in the year before, which is in the 2020 financial year, and that continued to the current year. And we reported that case there, and management properly disclosed the irregular expenditure. Also, I would like to note or highlight to the committee that the irregular expenditure was assessed and evaluated by the committee, by the municipal committee, which is a Section 32 regulation committee, and it was written off as not recoverable, a significant part of it. Then at the end of the year, the balance of irregular expenditure was nil. If we move on to the focus areas, on compliance with specific legislation, when we look at legislation, we do not look at all the legislation of the municipality that they are required to comply with, but we have selected legislation that we audit for reporting purposes. Otherwise, the municipality is expected to fully comply with all the requirements of the municipality. Then in terms of, there were no findings that were significant or material for reporting, which is a good thing, and we commend the municipality in that regard. In terms of the predetermined objectives, also we don't look at all of what the municipality intended to report on in terms of the annual report, but we selected a specific program, which in this current year, we selected program 1, strategic objective 1, which is creating inclusive, responsive, and healthy environment, which is conducive for the living and sustainable growth. On that program that we audited and we're reporting on, we are saying the municipality did not have any findings that we identified. As a result, it was also unqualified for reporting purposes. So in terms of other matters, we are just highlighting that as we don't look at all the information that is resulting in underachievement or overachievement, we just refer any users of the reports to where the information is contained in the annual report, which in this case is the page numbers that are contained in the annual report for that information. Looking at the drivers of internal controls. So when we look at an audit, we also look at the internal controls. The internal controls which we expect from the municipality are the preventative controls, and we also look at detective controls that are in place and functioning in the municipality. Then the picture that we are highlighting here is that for the Mossel Bay municipality, when you look at leadership, because we look at controls in 3 broad areas. We look at leadership, we look at financial and performance management, and as well as looking at governance. So when we look at leadership, we highlight that in terms of leadership, there are 5 broad areas there, or 6 broad areas there, which is effective leadership culture, oversight responsibility, human resources management, policies and procedures, action plans, as well as IT governance. Then in terms of the colors that we have there, we have green in terms of effective leadership culture, oversight responsibility, and human resources management, where we are saying there are preventative or detective controls that are in place and are properly functioning at the municipality. As a result, we did not identify any areas of non-compliance or misstatement relating to those areas of control. Then in terms of policies and procedures, we're highlighting there as yellow, we're saying there is progress made by the municipality in terms of the controls, but further improvements are required in this area where the municipality needs to take some actions in terms of addressing the issues that we've identified. That is applicable for policies and procedures as well as action plans. For policies and procedures, we identified the policy that was not aligned in terms of the human resources policy is not necessarily aligned to supply chain policies. As a result, where procurement is done or a service provider is obtained using the human resources policy, it would not cover all the aspects that should have been covered by the supply chain related regulations or policies. Then in terms of the action plans, we also highlighted in yellow as saying progress was made. However, there's still improvement required due to some repeat findings that we have identified. That was in the area of financial statements, which is the assets, as well as the classification. It was classification of assets as well as the landfill site provision. The calculation that was incorrect there. We also identified commitments that also were incorrect in the previous year as well as the current year. Hence, we're saying action plans we also have require some improvement in going forward. When you look at IT governance, again, that one is green. We're saying there is preventative or detective controls in place which are functioning well. Then when we look at financial and performance management, we highlight the proper record keeping is one of the areas that we look at, which is highlighted as yellow. That is as a result of information that is not readily available when it is required for audit purposes. And we encourage management to keep the information in a manner that it is easily retrieved and provided for audit purposes. So there were 2 areas where we identified challenges regarding the information, but it was subsequently provided for audit purposes. Then hence we're saying just continuous improvement is required in that area. When processing and reconciliation of information, we're saying there were adequate controls which were sufficient and functioning effectively. Under reporting, like I highlighted initially, there were areas on financial statements relating to the assets which was the classification of assets and landfill site as well as commitments that were misstated, but those misstatements did not result in any non-compliance, which were subsequently corrected by management in the financial statements, and therefore, hence they received a clean audit outcome. Also on IT controls, there are controls that are there but are not as yet as effective as we would like them to be. Hence, we are saying improvement is required. So those relate to IT systems, that is the information systems controls, which are access controls, basically where there were findings identified in that area. Then if you look at governance, under governance, we look at risk management, we look at internal audit, and we look at audit committees. In those broad three areas, we did not identify any findings, and we're saying, therefore, there were sufficient and preventative and detective controls which were functioning effectively throughout the audit cycle that we looked at. That generally covers now the internal control environment of the municipality. Moving on, we are highlighting in this section that there are emerging risks that the municipality need to look into in detail, because this risk could potentially affect the Auditor General's opinion in the future if they are not properly addressed. This relates to the standards of GRAP, which is General Recognized Accounting Practices, where the standards have an effective date, but once the effective date is determined, then the municipality would be expected to fully comply with these GRAP standards. But at the moment, there is no effective date that has been determined. So the municipality just need to keep up to date or be on the lookout once that date has been issued. We also highlight that there is a withdrawal of the ministerial exemption, which was exempting the municipality from complying with certain requirements of the MFMA. But we are saying subsequently this has been withdrawn. Therefore, for the period that is the ensuing period, the 2021-22 financial year, the municipality will be expected to fully comply with all the requirements of the legislation. Therefore, our audit process as well will audit those matters that were exempted in the 2020-2021 financial year. In terms of disclosure of irregular expenditure, we're saying currently the National Treasury Circular 68 is silent on how the irregular expenditure should be disclosed. That is, whether it should be inclusive or exclusive of VAT. However, we are encouraging that the municipality should engage or have or be on the lookout, because National Treasury is currently looking into revising that circular so that it is clear that the irregular expenditure that needs to be disclosed is inclusive of VAT. So once National Treasury has issued that circular, the municipality would be expected to fully comply with it. If we can move on to the local content, for this municipality, we did not identify any local content requirements. However, we're saying here, in terms of the preferential procurement regulations, an organ of state must, in case of designated sector, advertise the invitation to tender with specific conditions that only locally produced goods or locally manufactured goods meeting the stipulated minimum threshold for local production and content will be considered. So National Treasury issued instruction note in the 2016-17 financial year where they indicated the designated and provided minimum threshold for the steel products and the components that are used in the construction. This instruction was applicable for these products if they are purchased separately or used as part of the 10 key products in the construction projects. And there were no findings that we identified. So we acknowledge that there were no non-compliance that we have identified at the municipality. However, that does not mean that the municipality must not comply. They must make sure that they fully comply with this circular, as it could impact them should they not have considered this local content on the steel products. Then the next one is the audit of performance information. When we audited the performance information, there were areas that we looked at being the presentation and disclosure of the performance information as well as the relevance of performance information. These areas, when we looked at, we said they will not impact the overall report. However, we will audit so that to ensure that the municipality is ready for when we as Auditor General are reporting on these matters. When we talk about the presentation, we look at overall presentation of performance information in the annual report to ensure that it is comparable and it is understandable. And in this area, we did not identify any findings. Similarly, for relevance, we look at whether the information that is reported is complete in terms of the core functions of the municipality that should be prioritized, in terms of relevance of the information, in terms of the indicators that are included in the year under review. For on this area as well, which is the relevance, we did not identify any findings. Then in terms of the financial statements, again, we identified an area here where we're saying accounting for availability charges was a bit inconsistent in terms of what is expected. The availability charge, which is referred to in different names depending on the municipalities, where the municipality levies on a monthly basis a monthly charge for having installed the infrastructure for water and electricity or sewerage in the area where the consumer resides. However, the consumer might not have requested the services or is not even connected to the network, but is charged for those for that network connection. Therefore, we are saying that is a non-exchange revenue when that is charged, when the availability charge is charged by the municipality. But some municipalities disclose this as exchange revenue. In terms of Auditor General, we have engaged with National Treasury to get the clarification on the matter, and we are aware that there is guidance that will be issued subsequently, but at this point, when we've concluded the audit, it was not yet issued. So we accepted the current treatment with the indication that the municipalities also need to engage with National Treasury in order to obtain sufficient guidance in the manner which we will look at when we're auditing the 21-22 financial year. Also, in terms of the standards of GRAP, in terms of GRAP 24, the municipalities are required to reflect the information on a comparable basis with the budget versus the actual spending of the municipality. But we're saying here, what is detailed in the approved budget should be used as the basis for comparable when the financial statements are prepared, which in this case for Moselby municipality, the municipality prepared their statement of comparison with budget, but it was not properly aligned on an exact same basis, which was saying in future the municipality needs to ensure that when they present the statement of budget of comparison of budget and actual amounts, it must be on the exact same basis with what was presented in the budget statement. That is again something that is a risk for the year that is coming for audit purposes. So that then concludes the presentation on the audit outcomes, unless the members have some questions for Auditor General. Thank you very much for the opportunity once again.
Thank you so much. From the side of the Auditor General, I don't know whether it's Mrs. or it's Miss Ndamela.
It is Mrs. Nzamela, Chairperson. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Ndamela, thank you so much. I didn't ask you beforehand about the questions, but I will ask the committee now. Committee members, is there anyone that have questions out of the presentation of Mrs. Ndamela? Anyone?
Chair, my hand is raised. Councillor Gous.
Okay, you're welcome, Councillor Gous.
Thank you, Chair. May I thank the Auditor General for her report. I really appreciated it. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to just ask you if you could please give us clarity when you say about the budget and the actual amounts that have been compared, that they were not compared on the same basis. Can you maybe just elaborate a little on that, because I'm not understanding that exactly. And then the other thing that I'd like to ask you, if you could possibly repeat, is the material misstatements regarding debtors and creditors. It was a little quick for me to follow. If you could just repeat that, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chairperson. Through you, the first question of the member, I would respond by saying, just to clarify, what we are saying, we are not saying the budget was not there, it was there, and the actual amounts that were spent were matched to the budget. However, the budget that was presented, the line items within the budget were not exactly the same, which now on a comparable basis, there was information that was either grouped together or split for the purpose of reporting, which was not now aligned, but it was easy for us to trace back to say, these two amounts that are split here, where are they coming from in terms of the budget? And we were able to do that properly. Hence, we are not reporting on any findings relating to this statement, but we're saying, for the purpose of presentation, the expectation is that the municipality should fully comply with the GRAP requirements to match the line items of the budget to the line items of expenditure. Then further, in terms of the second question relating to the mistake, there were no misstatements necessarily, but we are highlighting that in terms of the financial health, the municipality needs to monitor their expenditure in line with maybe just to highlight again, just to go to the presentation to properly explain this area that I'm going to talk about on financial health. Just taking time to get.
Through you, Chair, SM, can you see the presentation? I'm sharing it again.
Yeah, okay, yes. So here we're saying the financial health, because the municipality had negative indicators in terms of the debt impairment provision. It was more than the percentage, which is a threshold for our audit purposes that we have of 10%. Any negative indicator, which is any indicator that is above 10% of our criteria, is considered negative. So we're saying here the debtors impairment provision was more than 10% or greater than 10%. Similarly, for the creditors' percentages, cash as a percentage of cash and cash equivalent, it was exceeding the 100%, which we expect that it should be less than that, or should be more or less 100%. That means what the cash that is available for the municipality, we are saying the municipality should be able to pay its creditors when they fall due. So the moment the cash and cash equivalent is more than 100%, it would mean, or when the creditors percentage is more than 100%, it will mean that the municipality have more creditors than the cash that is available. So they will not be able to pay all their creditors when they fall due. But it does not mean they don't have funds available, but it just means that when you're looking at that, there is some disconnect in terms of the percentage. That also is in terms of the current liabilities as a percentage of next year's budget. We're saying if it is greater than 10%, it's something that is need to be looked at. So all the liabilities of the municipality should not be more than 10% difference. So we have a threshold of 10%. Anything that is above 10%, we report on it as a negative indicator that there is a chance that the municipality might not be able to pay, or their liabilities are more than their resources that they have in terms of cash. I hope that clarifies the question for the members. Thank you, Chairperson.
Yeah, thank you so much for that one. I see Preston. Preston, your hand is up.
Yes, Chair, through you. I just wanted to explain more detail with respect to the budget. Was an actual statement. I just wanted to say that when council approved the budget, the budget is being prepared in a certain format, or being displayed to them in a certain format. So what we're saying is that the same format of the budget should be used when management prepared the budget was an actual statement. So there was a disconnect with the format of the budget in the AFS, but we could reconcile the information. But now for the standard, it says that the format must be exactly the same. So that is basically what we're saying. So management doesn't need to make sure that when they prepare the budget was an actual statement, that they're using the budget as formatted that was presented to council.
Okay. Now, Preston, thank you so much. Before we go on, let me just check. Is there anyone else of the committee that have questions for the Auditor General's personnel? Anyone else? If there's no one, then I want to say to Preston, yourself, as the manager, and also your senior manager, Mrs. Nzamela, thank you very much for your presentation. You are welcome to stay part of the meeting. But if you have other commitments, then we want to thank you so much. We will give feedback to council from your presentation also, and all the stuff that we need to report to council. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Chairperson. If we may be excused, we'll leave the meeting. Thanks.
All right, thank you. You are excused. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair. All the best for the day. Thank you. Bye.
President, our next item on the agenda is the presentation from the municipal manager, Mr. Colin Puren. Mr. Puren, you are welcome.
Thank you, Chairperson. We've just posted the presentation. It shouldn't take as long as the AGs. It's just to give a broad overview of the annual report to the members. So I'll run quickly through it, Chairperson. If there are any questions, we will gladly try our best to answer it. And I must maybe, just before we say thank you, I'll ask the CFO just to explain the last slide regarding the financial ratios. So, Chairperson, without any further ado, I'm going to start now. It's fine, Obi. Firstly, we want to give a little bit of legal context regarding the annual report. And I think we're going to spend about 5 slides, but we really don't have to spend lots of time, because it's basically stuff that we go through annually. The MFMA is basically the legislation that gives us, that's a backbone of the annual report. And if you can see there, section 121.1, every municipality must for each financial year prepare an annual report in accordance with that specific chapter in the MFA. And the council of the municipality must, within 9 months after the end of financial year, deal with the annual report of the municipality and of any municipal entity under its control. Now, Chairperson, touch wood, we've never exceeded the 9 months in the years. The next slide, you can move on over. The mayor, section 127, says then that the mayor of the municipality must, within 7 months after the end of each financial year, table in the municipal council the annual report of the municipality and of any municipal entity under the municipality's sole or shared control. I think we are all aware of the process that we are so far. We're at this stage where we table it to the MPAC to do its final review before we take it back to council. Thanks, Obas. And then section 127, once again, after the annual report is tabled, it must be must be put out for scrutiny by the public, and the local community is to be invited to submit representations in connection with the report. And this, we submit the annual report to the AG as well. And I think what we received here today from them is basically their feedback that they give to the MPAC in the end. And section 129 says that the council must consider the annual report of the municipality and of the entity, and by no later than 2 months from the date on which the annual report was tabled in the council in terms of section 127. Now that the original report was tabled in January, so we will do our best to. We have the MPAC today, and we want to table the final report to council in this month's council meeting, which will be before the end of March. So we will be within the time frames as per that section of the MFMA. Thank you, Vas. Okay, Chairperson, then 129 once again, it just gives us a further bit of context. Council must consider the annual report of the municipality. I'm just giving basically the route which this report traveled up till now. And there are 3 points that's pointed out there. Firstly, Council must have approved the annual report. It can either be without reservations, or the second option, Council can reject the annual report. And the third option, it can be referred back for revision of the components that cannot be, that can be revised. In other words, if it's not 100% correct, council can decide at the March meeting to refer it back. Thanks, Obas. And then, Chairperson, then there's a responsibility on the accounting officer also. The accounting officer must attend the council committee meetings where the annual report is discussed for the purpose of responding to questions concerning the report. And B, we must submit copies of the minutes of those meetings to the AG and the relevant provincial treasury and provincial department responsible for local government in the province. Now, Chairperson, one of the the legislative requirements is the MPAC also, where this report was tabled today, for instance. And we can mention we received some. We asked the members of this committee also to give us questions before this meeting. And we can confirm that we did receive some questions from Councillor Gous in this regard. Thanks, Obas. Okay, Chairperson, this beautiful slide, and I know Mr. Jantjies will look at it because he likes slides. It's basically just the municipal accountability cycle in accordance with the relevant legislation. As we can see there, everything starts with the IDP. From the IDP is basically the 5-year strategic document of the council, which spells out the roadmap that this council want to go in, the direction they want to go in. Out of that, the budget comes, the annual budget, and then also the service delivery and budget implementation plan, which is our annual implementation plan, which the directors take responsibility for. And there's also monitoring involved as far as our section 52, 72 and 71 report is concerned, that we call our in-year reporting. From that follows the annual financial statements. And then the last one is the annual report that we are busy with. So if we look at the financial year for 2021, we are basically at the last step now. And as you can see there, both the IDP and the annual report, this committee as well as council plays a huge oversight role as far as it concerns. And very important, right at the bottom, the accuracy of the information depends on the organizational structure aligned to basic services. And later on, I'll just give a little bit of feedback out of the annual report or synopsis as far as basic service is concerned. Also, the sound financial policies, process and procedures. And then the standard chart of accounts for municipalities. And if you have heard what the Auditor General said, they are looking exactly at those things that we've indicated to on this slide. Thank you, Obas. Now, the annual report is made up of different components, Chairperson. This slide is just to give the MPAC an idea of the chapters, what each chapter of the annual report consists of. And it's basically a synopsis. I believe that all the members have gone through it, so I won't spend a lot of time on this slide. Mr. Laus can also make this presentation available to the members. And then, Chairperson, this is basically what the audit, this one slide, encompasses what the Auditor General came to tell us today there. If we look there at the 2020-21, we had a clean audit, the green, the same with the middle year. And then the 2018-19, we had an unqualified audit with findings, which the Auditor General has pointed out to now. Thank you, Obas. Okay, now, Chairperson, I've said I will touch on a few highlights from the as far as basic service delivery is concerned. Now, if we look at this slide, I think Mr. Naidu's department has done fairly well with the goals that we've reached there. If we look, for instance, 286 water meters were replaced. At the bottom, we did 646 water meter related repair work, which was completed. This is just a small synopsis out of the report that we can move on over. The next one is obviously sanitation provision highlights. And you can see there, what's very important, Chairperson, is the preventative maintenance tasks completed, 1,072. But apart from that, if we just look at the bottom, we still had 3,230 blockages which were opened. And those blockages it's for a lot of reasons that we encountered blockages. And then right at the bottom, 54,537 kiloliters of sewage discharge at our treatment plants we received and processed. So that is it's huge work, and we need to mention that the departments did quite well in those areas. Over. Right, electricity provision highlights. Once again, more than 3,000 preventative maintenance tasks completed. 429 illegal connections were removed during the operations, and 406 informal and formal households electrified as part of the UISP. The UISP is an informal settlements upgrade of informal settlements program, and we all know as councillors the problems that we encounter in some of our areas where people are, tapping electricity illegally. So Mr. Naidu then managed to, to connect 406 individual households in the formal and informal sector. Thank you, Obas. Refuse provision highlights. Chairperson, there's one point I want to point out that the department has done very, very well. If you look at the fourth bullet, the recycling increased to 21% of total collection. For many years, we got stuck at under 10% of total collection, but now we are already at 21%. It's in line with our strategic objectives to look at our environment and to get people to recycle more. Obviously, if we can get to 50% there, we would have changed the world as far as Mossel Bay is concerned. And then also what's very important is the education and awareness campaigns that they conducted regularly, especially in our previously disadvantaged areas where people are prone just to dump stuff all over the show and so on. Thank you, Obas. Right, and then the highlights of the infrastructure services. Chairperson, there's a lot of beautiful things that happens, but if you look at the capital expenditure for the year, roads and stormwater more than 100%, water 96%, sewage 93%, and electricity 97%. Now, if you heard what the Auditor General said, I think our expenditure overall was just 10% under 100%. So it brings us over 90%, and it's because of these type of expenditure from our departments that we can, not boast or brag, that we can be proud of, that we do expend and deliver the services to the people. Thank you, Obas. Okay, and then, Chairperson, as all municipalities, we were also hit by COVID, and there's a breakdown of all the COVID positive cases in all our directorates over the period of under revision. And as you under review, and as you can see there, mostly there are two lines there with 50 and 56. It's the departments where the most of our employees are employed. Community services, which entails the parks and refuse removal as well as infrastructure. These two departments have got, you know, if you put them together, more than half of the municipal managers or 2/3 of the employees are situated in those departments. I must, Chairperson, thank our Director Corporate Services and our HR department, who played a very, very huge role in mitigating the situation as far as our employees are concerned. We are saddened by the fact that we lost 5 of our employees during the year under revision due to COVID, and it's not good for anyone. But thanks to the departments who work hard to sensitize our workers, and still doing it today. And then, Chairperson, our last slide before we say thank you is the one on the financial ratio dashboard. Everything is green, and that shows a green light shows to me goodness, but I'll give over to the CFO just to make a few comments on that, and that will signal the end of our presentation. If there are any questions, we will be glad to answer as far as possible. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, Municipal Manager. Is there anyone of the committee who has questions for attention at the Municipal Manager has volunteered? Anyone, you're welcome.
Chair, if I may, it's Councillor Gous.
You're welcome. Then go.
Thank you, Chair. I want to say that I appreciate the breakdown that we received from the Directorate or of the Directorate Infrastructures. And that is one of our best performing directorates regarding capital expenditure. Every year, Director Naidu manages to spend almost all his capital budget and complete projects. I'm not talking about the multi-year projects, although as I understand, that's always on target according to the reporting that we get as well. Very rarely is it off target. My concern is that we never got a breakdown, and I'm really sorry. It sounds like I'm picking on this, but on the integrated planning and housing. Because that is a concern. Year after year after year, we do not meet our target there. And we under-expend considerably on our capital budget there. One of the questions that I sent in on Tuesday was the underspending in housing again. And then it's mentioned that it was due to the fact that it was incorrectly budgeted. Can we please have somebody elaborate on what we mean by it was incorrectly budgeted? Thank you, Chair.
Chairperson, I will ask Director Venter or CFO. I unfortunately did not receive the questions beforehand. I received it this morning, but I believe that, and as Councillor said, she did receive some answers. So I'll count on my colleagues to try to give a little bit more input as far as that is concerned. Carol, maybe you are CFO.
Thank you, Chairperson. Regarding the underspending of integrated human settlements, that is true what Councillor Gous is saying. It's year after year after year. It's simply due to the beast we are dealing with. It's different financial years, so you get an amount gazetted in March. Our budget is only approved at the end of June or at the end of May, so you can only start implementing in July, whilst the money is already, according to the department, given to us in March. They then start, if there's certain not sufficient progress in terms of a project, then they do an adjustment budget in around and about, I think it's October, November in terms of that year. So let's say they've given us 60 million rand, we only used, let's say 30 million rand, then they do an adjustment to, let's say 40 million rand, they check on the progress, and then we start to report and indicate that there's an underspending on the expenditure. However, the project itself is not behind. It's just the way that we received money from the Department of Human Settlements. One should look at the project itself, and in this instance, it's the upgrading of informal settlements project, and that project, as reported to council, like in yesterday, the contractor is actually given over the site, and that project is continuing. So the project did not stop at all. regarding the mistake in terms of, or not mistake, regarding the issue of the budget, what was mentioned there, I can't comment on that. I think our budget people, CFO, I don't have information to that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Venter. Is the Director of Finance, is he available?
Yes, Chair.
Chair, sorry, before Olandi speaks, Chair, I can't properly hear you. I don't know whether I did tell Mr. Laux about the sound. I don't know if others can hear it. It might be that I'm a bit deaf, but I can't, whenever you speak, I can't really properly hear you. Sorry, Chair.
Yes, Chair, I think you're a little bit, I also agree, you can't really hear you clearly.
Chair, sorry, I see that you are actually muted.
We can't hear you clear, Chair.
Chair, you
You
were
just
well.
have to put your voice on again. I see you're muted. Sorry, Chair.
I will mute myself again. Can you hear me now?
There we can hear you, Chair.
All right. Thank you so much. Director of Finance, I think there's still an outstanding question there from
Councillor Ghost. No, thank you, Chair. You're still coming across as soft, even though your mic is back on again. With regards to the budget, as the response actually comes, or Carl started responding to it as such as well. In that, before our financial year, we'll get our national and provincial allocations when we start drafting our budget for the new financial year. That normally takes place in the month of February, March. Then we'll get the big sum, we'll include it as part of our plan, as part of our budgets. And then as Carl indicated, sometimes there are holdups and sometimes the funds don't come or the spending doesn't happen. And that's where you'll get that underspending and possible underspending that may affect the budget and the spending against the budget. That's usually where you get that. But to say they budgeted incorrectly, it might be a bit harsh from their side, as a lot of our budgeting takes into account all external provincial and national government letters and communication that kind of helps us with the budget process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director. Is there anyone else with questions for Mr. Colin Puren from his presentation?
Chair, Councillor Gous, if I may just follow up.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. I understand the challenges that we have regarding the gazetting of funds and the actual application of them. Thank you. But if I may just state, Director Fredericks, thank you for your response. I didn't mean to be harsh. I'm actually just quoting the annual report that says that the underspending in housing was due to the fact that it was incorrectly budgeted. That is actually a verbatim quote from the report. Thank you so much.
There's a question from Aniki Janse van Rensburg, Councillor.
Chair, thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm not going to ask the question. I want just to, I sent a message to your private, also Councillor Tabo can't be in his laptop, it's by IT. Just that he know, as soon as he's finished there, he's coming in on the meeting also.
All right, thank you, Councillor.
I also want to say, if I may, if I look what the MM also, the presentation also there, it's clearly for us that we can see where the expenditures also is, where the money it's going to. And that's for us, give us more clarity also that we are not a little smaller, we're growing every year. And this is a serious matter for our municipality also. Thank you. That's all I want to, but thank you so much for our MM for what he did and also for our directors, what they're putting in. It's hard work.
Thank you, Councillor. Here in my notes for Councillor Mvuvu. And then also I had excuse from, I think it's Councillor Kaname. Yeah, there's a problem with her laptop also. Is there any other questions from the presentation of the municipal manager?
Chair, this is, do you still require me to go through the last slide of the MM's presentation? Are there any other councillors that need me to go through that, the ratios as at the end of the financial year?
Yeah, I think it's best as if you do it, please, Director. It will assist the new councillors also. Thank you so much.
Henry, are you able to flash it again for us, please?
CFO, yes, I'm going to do that now. Just give me a second.
Chair, I'm not sure what exactly is wrong with your sound, but it sounds almost like you're speaking underwater. It's very faint and slightly distorted. It was clearer earlier in the presentation or during our meeting, but now it's for some reason very bad.
Councillor House, this one to become clever. Connect your computer to a bigger computer and you don't know the technology. Then it happens like that. But sorry for that.
That sound is better right
It's
now.
clearer, Chair. It's clearer.
Yes, much clearer.
Chair, if I can then take the committee through the presentation or the financial ratio dashboards. As at the end of June 2021, our current ratio was 2.3. Current ratio reflects or is just an indicator of the municipality's liquidity as at any point in time. A good current ratio or best practice current ratio is looked at. You should have a ratio of 1.5. We are sitting at 2.3. What that means is that with a 1.5 ratio, we have money in the bank or money we can turn quickly of R1.50 for every rand that we owe. So that's what that means. So at the moment, for every rand of debt that we owe, we have 2.3 times that amount, or let's say if it's for every rand I owe, I got R2.30 to cover that short-term debt or short-term obligation. So from a current ratio point of view, the municipality is doing very well. Debt to cash, that just speaks about gearing to a great extent of the municipality. As we all know, good business sense or business practice is not to be over indebted as a municipality, because then a lot of your money will be going to servicing that debt instead of being used for service delivery and other more important priorities or capital spending. And the best practice is we looked at a debt to cash ratio of 1.5, where at the moment we are below that, sitting at 1.3, or not at the moment, but at the end of June 2021, we're sitting at 1.3. And then the next two ratios is kind of hand in hand. They talk about our debtors payment ratio as well as the turnover accounts receivable. So debt payment ratio, the target is for the municipality to collect 95% of its invoices throughout the 12-month period. And at the end of the financial year, we had a collection of 95.2%. That at the end of June 2021 was a concern from the finance department, as the municipalities used to higher percentages, seeing 97% in 2020. But this is as a result of the lower debt collection is a result of COVID and the effect it had on our residents in Mossel Bay. And so obviously with the unemployment, increase in unemployment and people having difficulties to pay, that collection rate has taken a knock. And similarly, because of the reduction in the collections, our turnover on accounts receivable is now increased to 11.4 compared to a 7.6 at the end of June in the prior year. But that is something that we can still manage, that we're still finding managed, but it is a concern for us from a collection point of view, as we need cash to be able to deliver service at the end of the day. Thank you, Chair. Are there any questions?
There's no questions.
No, Chair, Councillor Gous.
Councillor Gous, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Director, if you could just assist me, when I looked through the report and I looked at these ratios as it was reported, it looked good to me for my limited knowledge on it. But the concern that was raised by the Auditor General, how does that speak to these ratios? Because I was surprised when she said that there was a concern with them for our financial health. Because if I look at our financial statements and our ratios, to me, it looked like we were in good health. If you could explain that, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Chair, thank you, Councillor Gous. With regards to the concern raised by the Auditor General, as indicated, they have certain indicators that they report on that will say whether or not the financial management of the municipality is sound, if there's any concern. In the prior years, they've always questioned certain, or they had two indicators in the previous year, which then reflected on which wouldn't have been seen as a concern. The big change that changed the outcome for the past year was the increase in provision as a result of the lower collections. So that was the big change because from two indicators in the prior years, we've now moved to there's three indicators, which to them moves us out of a almost like a good status to just something of concern. But that was as a result of the increase in debtors, which then, as a result of the increase in debtors, reduction in collections, we've now obviously had to relook our provision, which then kicked us over what the Auditor General then is comfortable with, which usually comfortable with. So at this point in time, we obviously, from a financial perspective, we are looking at implementing some policy changes that are going to assist with the debtors book. And then that obviously will then, going forward, that will then change some of these ratios positively for the municipality from a financial point of view.
Thank you, Director. Is there any other questions? And we are still with Mr. Colin Buren, in the Director of Finance. If there's nothing, then we also receive questions from the different councillors. I want to ask Councillor Gous, the questions that you sent in, Councillor Gous, I think you received this morning, you received the outcome of some of the questions. So we must, and if you are comfortable with it, say for instance, on your questions, there's certain answers that you have already in front of you. Then I would like you to go maybe from number 1 to 18, the questions that are not answered, then you can pose them so that we can either have an answer here or we will give it afterwards, because there's some of the questions I think if I can make an example, the one of the claims from to council from outside, there's some of these questions that Mr. Neil Prince will not be able to answer immediately. That contingent liabilities, the lawsuits, because some of them goes back 10 years back. So over to you, Councillor. How do you think we must handle the questions? Because some of the answers is now in front of you, so you can just then raise the outstanding questions. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I have not received any answers via email. When I checked this morning, I hadn't yet received anything. But within the discussion of the reports now, the question I had, question 10, has been answered. I think the question, one of the things that the first question I had is, how do we measure the impact or efficiency of our social programs? My concern is that we're spending money there and we're not really seeing our cost and value received are maybe not the same. And so I was just wondering, is there a measure that we use on how effective or impactful our social programs are? One of the programs mentioned in the report is a program for the elderly, where over a period of a year, 100 people were reached. Now, if I think what the cost was involved in reaching them, that is what I would like to know. Do we evaluate that? Will we do it one by one, Chair? Because that's a kind of question that can be answered in the committee now, I would think.
Yeah. Councillor House, I think we must rather do it then one by one.
Thank you, Chair.
There's directors that give answers, that have the answers also in front of them, but the outstanding questions we will send to you.
Okay. Yes. Like, for example, the question 12 and 13, as you mentioned, I can understand that they would need to be investigated before the answer can be given. Although question 13, I think, can be answered. But yeah, if we can start like that, that will be great. Thank you.
Yeah. But Councillor House, I think you must pose from your side. You have not the questions in front of you. You can pose the questions. Let me first hear there's a hand from Mr. Colin Puren before you start. MM.
Chairperson, thank you so much, Chairperson. No, just a comment, Chairperson, and Councillor House normally will copy me on the questions, because what we would have done with these questions, somebody would have coordinated it to ensure that she gets answers to most of the questions before today's meeting. But unfortunately, she didn't copy myself or Mr. Henry Loves. Henry Loves sent out a letter to the members to say, please send through your end. And I think it's just an oversight of her. I don't blame her for it, because normally she would have copied us, and we would have somebody would have coordinated to ensure, Chairperson, that we get the answers ready. So I want to apologize on behalf of all the directors. If they have the answers, it will be good. But if they don't have the answers, we will gladly give Councillor House feedback at a later stage. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair, if I may.
Councillor House, you're welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to MM, my very sincere apologies. I should have copied you and Henry in. Henry was a complete oversight. So I really want to apologize for that. I did copy all the directors and their chairs, though, thinking that they would then be able to look at whichever was relevant to them. But the questions that I've posed are not really questions where we'll need to do, investigations for figures and stuff like that. They're just questions for my clarity regarding spending and how we can improve processes and so on. So in my opinion, we should be able to answer them. If directors are not able to answer them, I won't have an issue with us then receiving answers, the committee receiving answers at a later stage. Thank you.
Councillor House. don't understand it. As we go through the list from 1 to 18 and the questions that can't be answered later.
Yes, please.
All right. Does anyone, Mr. Colin, your hand is up again?
Sorry, it was an old name. Sorry, Chair.
All right. Councillor House, you can start from 1 to, yeah,
Thank
start
you,
at
Chair.
1.
My first question was, how do we measure the impact or efficiency of our social programs?
I think Councillor House put the whole question on. Yeah, put on the whole question.
Okay, so what I wanted to know was, we have programs running with the aged and the disabled and so on. But my concern is, are we receiving value for money? If we consider the cost of these programs and the amount of people that are reached and the impact of the, when we do reach people, are we measuring that cost, and is it value for money? Because if it isn't, could the money not be better spent elsewhere? So what I'm asking is there a mechanism in place where we measure, are these programs effective? Are they cost effective? That's my question.
Okay. I see this is a question for.
I see Director Nell would like to answer, Chair. Her hand is up.
All right. Director Nell, you're welcome to answer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question, Councillor. I do have a counter question. Output measured in terms of what? How do you measure building self-esteem? How do you measure being a pillar in a community? How do you measure somebody being recognized and feeling that now, instead of in the past not being recognized, now they can actually make a contribution in a different way? So it is difficult to measure it, but on the other hand, we can do a test, for instance, and take a group of people where we do no interaction with for a period of 10 to 15 years, and then another group where we do have programs. And then after the 10 to 15 years, you can maybe see what the difference is. I think there has been lots of research in that in the world, so that we can refer to. For us, we have decided, when we started with the model regeneration program about 2 years ago, well, it was actually adopted by Council last year, September, that we will continue to be an enabler. We will continue to support and promote. And my community development team, I think, are tired of me saying that we work from a zero budget. Everything we do, we want to do with a zero budget. But obviously there needs to be, for instance, transport. You have to transport your disabled. You have to transport your some of your elderly people from the rural nodes in to attend a specific something. We had a outreach in Jonkersberg a week or two ago, and the feedback I got, and videos were taken from the elderly people there, that for the first time in more than 2 years, they have hope for the future. And that alone is a reward that cannot be measured. If we change one person's life, it's somebody that in the past have not been reached or touched. We are currently busy with a program in Herbertsdale, where we are building community vegetable gardens or vegetable gardens at houses of elderly and disabled people, or disabled people, small 1 by 1 square meters. We are using parolees, or people that will be soon will be paroled from community services or community corrections at the correctional facility in Mossel Bay to do the work. We use recycled bricks from the Great Brak landfill site. and the parolees get the opportunity to integrate in the community. The community gets to accept and welcome the parolees back into the community, and the result is not only people feeling better about themselves, but there's an actual physical vegetable garden that can be used for economic or self-sustainability purposes. So it is a lot, and this project has cost us nothing except transport. We are recycling the bricks, we have got donations for cement, we've got building sand from the site, and it's only transport, but we've done a number of gardens and we've already made a difference there. And the elderly people want to teach the youngsters themselves. So in the end, the idea is that communities in the end are supporting themselves and that we are just setting the ball on the roll. And it is a long process. We started, and then with COVID, we got hampered again. And whether we have 5 people or 50 people, the cost remains fairly the same. And unfortunately, in the past 2 years, our groups were a lot smaller. So I don't think it necessarily answers you exactly, but that is all I can say on this matter.
Director Niall, thank you so much. I want to urge the councillors to say, this is our annual report, I think the most important report of the year. So there's a lot of questions and answers, and we learn out of those questions and answers. So I want to ask Councillor House to continue to our next question.
Thank you, Chair. Allow me to thank Director Nell with much appreciation for her elaboration. I hear what she's saying. Thank you. My second question is our concern, with our local economic development efforts, which are tremendous and comprehensive and very innovative. Are we addressing the true concerns of or the true causes of unemployment? Because if we listen to the economists in South Africa, they're telling us that the unemployment in South Africa is structural unemployment, which means that it's unskilled labor for the work that's available. Are we engaging with our businesses and industries, for example, in Mossel Bay, that are struggling to find skilled labor, to ask what is the skilled labor, the shortage of labor that they're experiencing, and how we can assist them or ask them to assist us to facilitate training and skilling in the areas that they need. Because we have a very large unskilled labor force in Mossel Bay that, regardless of what initiatives we start, are still not going to be employable because they're unskilled. Thank you, Chair. I think that would probably go, probably Director Jantjies and Director Nell, Director Venter, I think.
Chairperson, may I respond?
You're welcome, Director Venter.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, now, Councillor Gous, I think it's a relevant question and perhaps not satisfactory in the way you want it to happen, especially in the year that this annual report is based on, as that was the main COVID year. So very little happened in that specific space. But yes, we actually made an effort in that particular year to meet with our business people on 2 occasions. We called it mini imbizos that we held with the business sector. And the main outcome of that session was, please market Mossel Bay. Please market Mossel Bay. They did not say, I can't recall that they complained anything about a lack of skilled workers for their particular industry. I'm not saying it's out there. Perhaps industries that do suffer from it did not attend that particular session, but from the sessions that the business people attended, and the message was very clear that they know how to do business and we must please market Mossel Bay. Therefore, the marketing campaigns that follow. That was our response to that particular request. But your question is very relevant. This year, with a PACA process that we are busy with, and tomorrow there will be a report back session, that is where business are given the opportunity, and skills development is one of those things. that actually came out of it. So taking it forward, we'll see how we can implement it. I think in terms of our own resources, knowledge, etc., regarding that space, we do have limitations ourselves, but let's see what will be the outcome, and hopefully we can attend to that structural unemployment in one way or another, as you've put it. Lastly, yes, we have huge unemployment in Mossel Bay. Unfortunately, it's a national crisis. It's not limited to Mossel Bay. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Thank you also for Tabu Mbumbu. You also join us. Janetta, you're welcome to carry on.
Thank you for that reply, Director. Makes a lot of sense to me. I want to quickly ask about our twinning partnership. Have we evaluated whether these costs are justified in comparison with the benefit we receive? Can the benefit be identified and quantified? Is it measurable?
Yeah, is it measurable is probably the correct question, and I think it's something that we continue asking ourselves in terms of these agreements. We must understand that these agreements are also not only about possible business ventures, it's also about cultural exchange and building relationships, those type of things, which is actually in certain instances a bigger component in twinning agreements than the actual possible economic benefits. So therefore we are, so Councillor, yeah, was it measured? You cannot really measure, you know, what I've just mentioned in terms of your cultural exchange and building relationships. Those are in place. We actually have very good relationships. The session we had last month with our twinning partners, we are actually possibly at calling each other by name now. That is how good it's going. It's just unfortunate also the year that this report is based on was actually the worst year in terms of international relations and traveling. I think one lesson learned is that we can actually build relations without visiting countries. We don't necessarily need to go there frequently, or they coming this side. But I believe relationships are better. It is improving, and we'll probably have some benefits coming from that. And that is what we are doing this year from that particular twinning arrangement. Is the webinars that we are currently hosting as a municipality. The past February one was the one on tourism, and the next three to follow, which will more be on your cultural and your economic development issues to follow. I hope that covers more or less what you are asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Gous, you can continue.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair. Question 4, I noted my concern about management of our assets in the past, and I note that this is identified as one of our risks in our report. Do we have a team dedicated to this task? I also heard the Auditor General mention this, sorry. Or do we have an asset manager, for example? Are we paying attention to our asset register and management of our assets?
Chair, if I can respond, I think we sent through the responses to the Councillor Gou's other email address, the one that's applicable for the municipality. So I'll just read through our response. Finance does have its own functioning asset unit. That was an add-on from the project management unit that was set up previously. Responsibility for individual assets rests with various user departments. There are some shortcomings with it when it comes to removal of assets, but the unit is busy addressing the concern or the gap, but it is a continuous process. We're also busy upgrading the asset management system, and our asset unit is busy in the final stages of the development of a condition rating business process, which then aligns to the triggers as per the GRAP standards. And then one of the focus areas for this deal, we're bringing the intangible assets up to standard by inclusion of servitudes and rights to land and property. A lot of the work is done behind the scenes to get an integrated asset management system that does not cost an arm and a leg to maintain. Property management remains the biggest concern. There's obviously land and buildings at this stage, and overall, the overall thing, overall goal for us is then just for to ensure it's got to have compliance within the municipality, but not really a service delivery risk at this stage.
Thank you, Director, for the response.
Thank
we
you.
are now at question 5.
Yes, I'm going to skip that because in a previous, the report that we had for the month, vandalism was mentioned of the ablution blocks at Diaz, and Puren actually answered that comprehensively, so it ended up answering this question as well. Chair, my following question is the awarding of tenders. I have raised this question in committee meetings. Could it be possible that some companies are underquoting on tenders in order to obtain them, and then once they have them, they apply for variations, which then increases the amount, the cost of the contract? Do we ever do a comparison between that final cost of the project and what other companies quoted for the project? It's my concern. I'm not saying it is happening, but I'm wondering if it's a possibility that some companies are receiving tenders because they put a price in at a lower price, and then once they've actually got the tender, then they come with variations on the tender, and not always just because of additional work. That's expansions. But I'm thinking specifically of a project in Grootbrak in Long Street, where the company that was awarded the tender, once they had the tender, came back and they had to do an entire revamp of the paving section near the school. And that was a considerable amount of hundreds of thousands that had to then be added to the tender because they said that they weren't aware that they would need to do that as part of the job. Now, they meant to evaluate how they were going to do that work and what would be necessary, and then to come to the municipality after the fact and tell us, oh, but we now need to do this and we need extra money. I'm just wondering if that is a way of actually beating other tenders to the contract, and it's actually a dishonest way of doing it.
Director Fredericks.
Chairperson, if I can start, I see Mr. Naidu's hand is up. But in my own experience, what the council is asking, whether it's possible in Mossel Bay, it's always possible, Chairperson. But as far as I'm concerned, the checks and balances that we have in place in our supply chain processes, it will be very difficult for a contractor to come and get something like that, right? Because when a request for something like that comes, it goes back to the adjudication committee, who really applies their mind before approving it. Also, I'm aware, also Mr. Naidu can respond now, when we put out a huge tender, we normally have a consultant who does comparison of prices, and normally the consultant will point out this guy's fee is too low, that one is exorbitant, and in the end we will always get to a place where the price that we pay is a I don't want to say a good price, not an irregular price, too high or too low. It's more or less in line. But I'll give over to Mr. Naidu to respond as well. Thank you.
Director Naidu.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, MM. Yes, the MM has covered to a certain extent what I was going to say. Yeah, just for information, when there's a application for a variation, it is first submitted to the director, who's got to scrutinize the application, and then in conjunction with supply chain, we look at the tender document. One of the things that we look at is the bill of quantities. So in other words, when the tender went out, and for example, let's just use the Long Street as an example. If they indicated that, say, 100 square meters of paving needs to be done, and what is the actual amount of paving that is now being done, by the contractor. So we make that comparison. But I think the point is that in the tender document, the consultant does specify the amount of paving or whatever it is that needs to be done as part of the tender. So everybody is tendering on the same amount. So you will not have a situation where somebody comes in low and then asks for more money because of certain shortfalls. So yeah, we definitely look for that. But these are what we try and look for also is that, was this a serious omission, by the consultant, or was it an oversight? Was it something that he could not sort of predict beforehand? But it's generally items that are within the contingency amount. So all tenders allows for a 10% contingency amount, and we first look at whether the variation can be done from the 10% contingency amount. Thank you, Chair. That is the response from my side.
Thank you, Director Naidu. Janetta House, Councillor, it's over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I hear what we're saying. I think my concern is that the contingency amount might be abused, but I hear that I understand what the Director and what the MM are saying about the checks and balances. I won't labour that point, but I will speak to Director Naidu later about the Long Street project in particular. Chair, then just quickly, I have in previous years requested that long-term contracts and capital work contracts be evaluated and reported on in the annual report. Are we receiving value for money from that contractor? Were there delays in completing the work? What were the reasons? Did they complete the work within timeframes and budget, etc.? So a brief report just on the performance of the contractors that we have engaged to be part of the annual report in the future. I have requested it. It was part of one of the recommendations, I think about 3 years ago, and it hasn't been implemented from what I can see. If the committee would like to deliberate on that, I'm not sure, but I think it would add value to the annual report.
Director Fredericks, it's your question, that one.
Chairperson.
Your hand is up.
Chairperson, yes. Just to respond to Councillor Gous, I can confirm that we had some issues regarding contract management, and our internal audit did an audit on it, and they came with very, very good recommendations. In the meantime, management has looked at it, and we've already taken a decision, to put things in place to better manage our contracts at this stage. And yes, the councillor is right. What we unfortunately haven't got it in here, but I spoke to OBAS now, and we will definitely see whether we can include something like in this regard in future or the annual reports as a council requested. I think it will be a good information to take note of for the committee. Thank you, Chairperson.
All right. Thank you, Municipal Manager. Councillor Gous.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to skip point 8 regarding the standby and overtime allowances. I think that is something that we can perhaps discuss at a later stage, where I have in committee meetings asked the administration to investigate whether it would be worth appointing an overtime shift, a nighttime shift, instead of paying overtime and unplanned overtime. I think it was, I can't recall the amount now. I did see it in the report, but it was a considerable sum that we spend every year on unplanned overtime, particularly as we know for call-outs to the west side of town because of overloading of the system and having to reset breakers and so on. But I'll stand that question over. But I would like us to see if we have done a cost analysis of whether it would be worth the municipalities while to save money. Would it save us money if we had a shift that actually worked in the evenings and we didn't have to pay people at 1.5 times the hourly rate for overtime in the evenings? Then Director Naidu I've just seen the reply that I received from him. I checked obviously just earlier than what I received the replies on the electrification grant program. He has answered me. And then I did ask, but this I can also get at a later stage, the exact amount of under expenditure for housing in this financial year. Unless that amount is available now, Chair.
Director, is that amount available or?
Chair, I will have to go and get the amount for the underspending. I know what the budget amount is, but not the underspending at this stage.
All right, Councillor, how do we come back to you on that one?
Thank you, Chair. And then I also saw that the COVID claims have not, although the council made the decision to pay those claims, if I understood the report correctly on page 179, we have said we haven't yet paid the COVID claims by contractors. What is the reason for that?
Director Fredericks?
The COVID spending, we'll have to, the COVID claims, I think we'll have to follow up. We don't have that. It's just hold on quickly. It was estimated of 1.6 million. It was in the AFs. There were 2 claims paid in 21-22 financial year, where it was at Herbertsdale and Kwa transfer stations for an amount of 888,900 rand. That's some of the feedback that I got on that.
Thank you so much. Director Niall, your hand is up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to confirm what the CFO just said. The council decision was taken in this financial year, just after the end of the previous financial year, and the annual report on the review is the previous financial year. Those claims were paid just a few weeks after the end of the financial year, after the council decision was taken.
Okay, so we were on question number 13. Sorry, before we carry on, Councillor Anneke van Rensburg, your hand is up. Councillor
Yes,
Anneke.
Chair. Yes, thank you, Chair. My concern is we are here by the MPAC meeting. I know we must have all the inquiries coming to us, that we know that we must also ask the questions to the directors and so on. But I think this morning, I feel if each of us have 14 questions we ask, and with respect, I said that, what time we stop here? Because I have it that this is, if I have a problem, I send my email to the directors, they give me the feedback, and if I didn't have it, I went back to them and asked them. I feel this morning, we are really busy to just focus on inquiries that can be the answers. It's on email, but I think just to tell you, if all of us ask 14 questions today, this is really not for me the impact way. This beginning of this impact meeting was very interested and very good, but I think we must just have a clear decision where we're going from here.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Anneke. I just want to say to Councillor Gous, Councillor Gous, I don't want you to respond on that. No? We already decide beforehand the reasons for why we allow it on the meeting. And it's also for new councillors to equip themselves. So it's fine, we will continue. We are almost finished. So we will carry on. Don't respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I asked whether I noticed in the report that we never received grants for sport and recreation. Did we apply for any grants? Because we know we do have a very big need in our communities.
Director Nell, you're welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we apply on an annual basis. And if you read on page 106 in the introduction or in the introduction paragraph, it clearly states there that we received grants for the lighting at the extension 13 sports field, as well as the money for the soccer field in Wolverdans. We received from the Sports and Recreation Trust from Sports and Recreation South Africa 6.6 million, and the funding for the lighting at extension 23 was about 1 million. We apply annually. As I said, we just received this year, we received a small amount from DCAS provincially for the netball fields in Great Black River to be resealed. Last year, we did not receive anything from DCAS itself, but the previous 2 years we did receive. We are one of the very few municipalities in the Western Cape that received 2 years in a row because we are spending it. DCAS has a budget of about 1.6, 1.7 million that they annually distribute between the 3 municipalities in the Western Cape. We are lucky if we get some money there. The most we've ever gotten, or any municipality has ever gotten, is about 400,000, but usually it's about 250, and that we have been lucky enough to get this year again. But otherwise, we have a number of projects that we apply for every year on every possible platform where we can get any funding for sports facilities.
Thank you very much, Director Nell.
Thank you, Director Nell. Appreciate that reply. I think my concern was picked up in the financial statements, which stated that for that year, no grants were received for sport and recreation, but I'll definitely go and recheck myself on page 106. Thank you for that. Then I just wanted to ask, the reporting of disclosures to the anti-fraud hotline is not reported to council, and those reporting is not mentioned in the annual report. Can we ask that it be reported to council and that it be more comprehensively reported in the annual report?
I don't know whose hand is this.
Chair, mine, Chair.
Okay, MM, you're welcome.
Thank you, Chairperson. I will gladly give feedback to the MPAC. Chairperson, as it stands now, let me start this way. Any councillor have got the right to inquire about the cases. You know, we won't give inside information, but the number of cases, what it were, any councillor, they can just speak to Henry Laus in the office of the MM. You will give them the information. The reason why it's not reported to council monthly or whatever the case is, the fraud and risk committee are actually dealing with the issues that's reported to the hotline. Now, I can say here, Chairperson, because I'm the chairperson of the fraud and risk, and the fraud and risk have got one of the audit committee members representing the audit committee. I can say to the MPAC now that since its inception, we had a couple of issues reported, but it was mostly service delivery issues and not stuff, you know, entailing fraud or corruption. The fraud and risk committee reports on then to the audit committee. And we must remember that the audit committee is appointed by council. We pay them for every sitting that they are involved in. And then the audit committee reports to council on a biannual basis. Now, I think the reason why you don't see much in the report is that not much is reported as far as fraud and corruption is associated, Chairperson. But we will definitely investigate, as a request is, to put something in the annual report in future regarding the hotline, you know, fraud and corruption hotline that the municipality is running at this stage. But once again, Chairperson, any councillor, if they want to ask anything, they can just send us a mail. We will do our best to answer them speedily as far as the hotline is concerned. I hope I answered the question of the councillor.
Thank you, Municipal Manager. Next hand is Director Carl Venter. Councillor Anku Baka, I recognize you. I will give you opportunity. Director, thank you.
Chairperson, no, thank you very much. Just I've got a bid specification meeting starting at 11 o'clock. It was actually already scheduled for 10:30, and I've asked them if I can just reschedule it to 11 o'clock. It's not out of disrespect for any of these committee members, but if I can be excused at 11 o'clock, I'll appreciate that. Thank you, Chairperson.
No, thank you. You will be excused. I think MM is here to answer, and all the other directors. Thank you so much. Councillor Ankubaka.
Thank you, Chairperson. I just want to allude to what Councillor Annie was saying with regards to the councillors receiving this agenda. I think it was almost 2 weeks ago that we received this agenda, and that all of these questions raised by Councillor Gous could have been sent through, you know, before we actually started this meeting, and then she could have gotten the answers beforehand. I just feel that we are now really, she's been asking all of these questions, and it could have been dealt with before we started this meeting already. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. There's a reason why we allowed it, and that's why we made the ruling before the start of this meeting. We want new councillors to learn out of this process. Councillor Janetta Gous, yes, the questions was put in late. So all the directors couldn't prepare them for the answers. So that's why we say we allow the answers we allow the questions so that we can give answers for the answers that we have in place. If we must go and do research for the answers or go to other departments, then we will give the answers later. So now we allowed it. This is our first annual meeting. We have a 5-year period. So for the first annual meeting, we will allow it so that we can learn out of the processes. Thank you very much. Councillor Gous, we are almost finished. We are now on question number 16.
Thank you, Chair. Let me not say anything. The different segments of the Mossel Bay municipality, do they bill each other? Because perhaps the councillors that are on the committee will be able to answer this. They might already know the answer. I unfortunately don't. But do the different segments of the municipality bill each other for work done? It was something I picked up when I read through the reports and the financial statements, that might be a possibility. If I could just have a yes or no answer on that.
Chairperson, can I respond?
I think that's for you.
Yeah, Chairperson, there are some instances, I'm just going to make an example. If traffic services wants to use a community hall for the purpose of a meeting, community services won't charge us for that. But there are other instances where technical services must do some work for a different department. In that case, there might be some charges. So the answer is yes and no, if the council understands. Yeah.
All right.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Chair, because that helps me understand the reporting better regarding the revenue and expenses according to the different directorates. I'm so sorry that the other councillors probably already knew that, and that I have to now ask this in the meeting. The last question is sick leave. I noted has been reported as being very high. Was this due to COVID, or is it a recurring problem every year? I can't recall seeing it mentioned in the previous year's annual reports, but I might have missed it.
Can we get the director, corporate service, to answer quickly?
Yeah, Director Jantjies.
Chairperson, I'm in the office of the MM, just next to you. Can you hear me?
I hear you very properly.
Excellent. Now, this is not a normal occurrence, but as we can see that as from March 2020, there was COVID, and that affected the absenteeism rate. So it's COVID related.
Thank you, Chair. That was my suspicion. Thank you.
All right, COVID related.
Then the last question I want to ask is, I noted in the report that we state, I think it was in the financial statements, employee benefit obligations. Yeah, it was in the notes to the financial statements, that employee benefit obligations are noted as an unfunded accrued liability. Could Director Fredericks just explain that to myself? I apologize if the rest of the committee already knows the answer to that.
Okay, thank you, Director Fredericks.
Thanks, Chair, through you. With that, the full employee benefit is not fully funded, as it has some, as it kind of linked and ring-fenced to investments. The current portion of our employee benefits is funded, but the non-current long-term liabilities, we are in the process of getting that also funded. So at present, Mossel Bay is investing 2.5 million per month for a period of 5 years to a non-current investment, so that all employees' provisional liabilities are then fully funded. But we are on track to achieving that milestone by the end of June 2025. And that will also then be 4 years prior to the first spending on the rehabilitation sites that which should then commence at that point in time.
Thank you, Director. Is there any other questions from any other councillor, part of the MPAC? Councillor Anike, I see your name, your hand is up.
Yes, Chair. I want to make just prefer something also for you, as with respect to the MPAC committee, that if we have any questions from the committee members, have any questions, or councillors, if we as MPAC meeting group also before this meeting can have also that questions, so that we can know what it is about. I mean, we are the MPAC meeting, and if there's from the MPAC meeting group they want to ask questions, that we had this before this meeting and prior when there's notification of this meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Anike, I think that is not a problem. So if we can share our questions, because we are one committee. So if somebody asks the question already, then you know I don't need to ask the same question. So now we will do it like that. It's not a problem. Thank you so much. Is there any other questions from the MPAC committee before we go to the consideration of the annual report? Councillor Janet House.
Chair, thank you so much. I don't have a problem at all sharing my questions. I was just led to believe by the other two councillors that they already understood everything in the report and they had no need to hear the answers to my questions. But in the future, I will definitely forward it to the rest of the committee. Can I ask, Chair, were there any other questions from the other members of the committee to the directors?
Not that I'm aware of, Councillor House.
Thank you, Chair.
No. Okay. So now we at last come by the only point on the agenda, consideration of the 2021 annual report. Janet, is your hand up again, or didn't you lower it?
My apologies, Chair, I never lowered it.
Okay. So we are now at the point on the agenda, consideration of the 21 annual report. So we will either approve the annual report with or without reservations. We will reject the report, or has the annual report has referred the annual report back for revision of those components that can be revised. I also want to say to the committee, if there's anything that you need, we as the committee must report to council. You can send it to me. It's nothing to do with the consideration of the annual report, but you can also report or we have questions within the council if you have later questions. I also want to say all the reports that was presented here today, if you don't have it, you're welcome to contact me and we can make you a copy. Maybe I must in any case make a copy for everyone of the 2 presentations that took place here today. Then you have this also. So we want the committee members to have in their disposal every document that they need to be up to date with the annual report or the functions of the MPAC committee. So now my question to the committee members. Consideration of the 2021 annual report. What are we saying? Are we approving an annual report without any reservations, or with or without any reservations, rejected the annual report, or referred the annual report back for revisions? Any proposals from anyone? Councillor Gous.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, if I may say, I would first like to just congratulate our directors and the MM and all the staff on an extremely well-prepared report. I cannot begin to comprehend how much work and time went into it, and we are very appreciative of everything they do. I also want to thank them for the time they take to always reply to my questions, so that I can better understand the functioning of the municipality and how we are reaching the mandate and achieving the objectives that we've set that have come through from the mandate given to the municipality through the constitution. From what I can read and from what I can see as being a part of this council, is that our administration is trying their very, very best to meet those objectives, and I'm really appreciative of that. I also want to just take note of the fact that Director Fredericks has replied to my question regarding the concern noted by the Auditor General regarding our financial health. And I've understood his explanation. Thank you so much, Director. But would it be possible for us to perhaps just include, although I accept the report without any reservations, that we just include that we note the Auditor General's concern? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gous. So there's a proposal from Councillor Gous. Is there any second?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I second this item.
Okay, so we have a report that will be approved without any reservations. But we will note as a note for council everything that was said. If there was a concern from the Auditor General, we will put it to council so that council is informed. Is that correct? Is there anyone that differs from me? So we have a report, annual report approved without any reservations. There's no comments. So then we came to the end of our meeting. I want to thank all the councillors that was part of the meeting, MPAC, even the councillors that is not part of MPAC. I see there was a lot of names that I saw here. Councillor Anton de la Main was also there. I also want to thank the Auditor General's personnel in their absence, and then also all our directors that gave the answers. I'm very glad for the manner in which everybody conduct himself in the meeting, the respect that is there between the executive, the MM and his directors, and the councillors, for how they treat each other with the necessary respect. So thank you very much for everybody. I just want to say one last thing. Councillors, you must note that the annual report is very important. It's an important report. I think for me is the most important, and it's coming through MPAC. So we must give everybody ample time to address all the concerns that they have, so that we can answer all the questions that is there. So thank you very much to everybody, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Frank.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair.